Godot, a free and open source game engine that's been blowing up in popularity over the last few years. A game engine is a software which is used to make games, and recently I've been having the itch to try it out. So let's get it installed. Now, a little backstory while I get it installed and set up. I have tried Godot before, and by try I mean copying an hour-long tutorial without actually learning anything. So this time, I'm building a 2D Pong style game from scratch. No mega tutorials, just looking up what I need as I need them. Once I had my project opened, I started looking around the interface and that's about all I could do. I was hoping my previous knowledge would carry me a bit further than this, but I guess I truly was starting from scratch again. So, to get at least a basic idea as to what I was supposed to do, I started looking for a tutorial. I was avoiding any long playlist at first, but then I found this playlist by NetNinja, and its first few videos helped me out a ton throughout my project. The first thing I picked up from the first video was that Godot works on a system of nodes. Nodes are basically boxes which can contain code and even other boxes inside it. There are many kinds of nodes in Godot, and I would learn about more of them as I progressed in my journey. I watched a tutorial for a few minutes, after which I went back to the editor and started off with the first element of the game, the pedal which the player will control. I added collision shape to it and attempted to give it color using the Sprite 2D node. Emphasis on the word attempt. I kid you not. The only method I found was by making a gradient and having both ends of the gradient be white. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. After I made the pedal, it was now time to add the code which would turn it from a white rectangle into something the player could actually control. In Godot, you do this by adding scripts to the node. By default, Godot has a pre-made template script for the node I was working with. These scripts make it easier for beginners to get started with the code. So, obviously I went ahead and disabled the template. On second thought, maybe I should have kept the template on. So I went back to get the template script, and in trying to do so, I closed the scene. And because I hadn't saved anything up until this point, the whole project was deleted. Now, luckily, I hadn't really done much till now, so I was able to get back to where I was in a few minutes. After getting the template script opened, I referred it to understand what to write for my script, and I had a basic script ready for the paddle. It worked fine except for a few things like it moving left to right instead of up and down, along with me using D instead of S for it to go down for some reason. I quickly fixed those. You can see that the pedal can just go off the screen, so the next thing I added was borders for the game. First, I tried using the static body 2D node with the world boundary collision shape. That didn't work, so I changed it to a line segment shape, which worked better. After making all 4 borders, it was now time to make the next element of the game, the ball. I made the ball's visuals similar to how I made the paddle. For the code, most of it was from Claude, as there were many built-in functions needed to be used which I didn't even know existed. After a few iterations, I had the ball in a functional state. Well, somewhat functional at least. Now, I had the core elements of my game in place, so it was now time to move on to the actual gameplay elements of it. The first thing I added was a condition for the player to lose. My plan for this was pretty simple. When the ball hits the left wall, the player loses. To do this, I had to learn something called signals. Signals basically allow one node to interact with another without needing to have them directly connected. For example, when a wall is hit, I can send out a signal to another node telling it has been hit, and you can tell the receiving node to do something when it gets the signal. For my use case, the wall will emit a signal when the ball hits it, and a game manager node will show the game over screen when it receives that signal. I quickly wrote the script for the left wall to emit the signal when it touched the ball, and then I started working on the game over screen. I went with a pretty simple design, just having game over written with a dark background using a color rect node. Next, I made a new node and named it Game Manager. This isn't an object in the game itself, rather, it is just a node which will contain code related to the game, mostly the behind the scenes stuff like keeping track of when the player lost or won. I thought I was done, so I tested it, and things just broke down. Not only did the game over screen did not show up, but the ball stopped working properly as well. And I guess it was my fault for just looking at Claude's code and hard coding everything instead of using the editor for the signals and stuff. So, after having enough of Claude's BS, I went back to the caveman days of coding and used print statements to debug. And after a few minutes of debugging, I finally had the game over screen working. The next thing I tackled were the blocks which would be destroyed when hit by the ball. For this, instead of adding another node in the same scene like I have been since the beginning, I made the blocks into a separate scene entirely. From what I understand, this is considered a neater way to handle different elements of the game, but for a project this small, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I made the basic block and this time colored it properly instead of using gradients like I was before. For testing it, I just made one single block, and I pretty easily made the script for the block to disappear when it is hit by the ball. But now, I had to figure out how to make a grid of these in my scene. Obviously, I wasn't gonna drag and drop the blocks one by one because that would be way too tedious and inefficient. And the thing I did was, drumrolls please, copy stuff from Claude. Now yes, I know, I just said that I was done with Claude's BS, but I just wanted a quick functional prototype and that seemed to be the easiest way to do it. And I won't even pretend I tried to understand anything from this. I straight up grabbed the code and dumped it in the editor, and it didn't work on the first try. Shocker. Nor did it in the second or the third. From what I saw, a tile map was the best option for what I was doing. Tile map basically creates a grid on the screen, and each cell of that grid can be filled in with sprites, scenes, or other nodes from a tile set. I added a tile map layer node, added an empty tile set to it, got the scene in the tile set, and finally when I went to draw on the grid, nothing happened. I was actively clicking my mouse trying to place the blocks, but it wasn't working for some reason. So I gave up and went back to Claude. So this is what a toxic relationship feels like. After about 15 minutes of trying to get it work, this is what I got. Now yes, I wasn't exactly happy with how it was, but I was just done with it at this point and decided to move on to the next part of the game and come back to this later. I started on the win condition of the game, aka showing the victory screen once all the blocks had been destroyed. To do that, I planned to use signals again to increase the counter by 1 until the number of blocks destroyed were equal to the number of blocks at the beginning. But the problem was, before this I'd only connected signals between two nodes in the same scene, but now I had to connect the signal between nodes of two different scenes, and I couldn't really find an easy way to do this at first. Luckily, I found this 6-year-old tutorial which gave me exactly what I needed. There are a few ways to do this, but the one that seemed to be the best for me was using something called groups. Basically, how they work is, you can put one or more node into a group from any scene, and when a trigger happens, the node shouts out to the whole group, and any node in that group having the matching function will fire. This worked pretty effortlessly, and then I made the victory screen similar to how I made the game over screen. The core of the game was done at this point, but still, it was in a pretty incomplete state. The ball, as you can see here, would occasionally bounce off at a weird angle and get stuck in this state. So, I started work on fixing it. 20 minutes and a few unsuccessful attempts later, I finally had it working reliably. Next thing that I wanted to fix was the block grid, cause let's be honest, this was pretty trash. I tried the tile map approach again because it should have worked in theory. So I did the same steps as before, and this time when I tried to place the blocks, it somehow worked. Why did it work now but not the last time? I don't know. Did I crash out? Maybe. But anyways, I made the new grid, removed the old one, and it looked much better. And with that, my first ever game in Godot was complete. Now yes, I know, there isn't much to it in comparison to the amount of time I spent on this. But still, I enjoyed the process of making it, and I only really covered one aspect of game development, which was coding. But there are so many other aspects as well, such as storytelling, art, music, and so on. I would love to make more games and give some time for those other aspects as well. But anyways, that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to mention.
Think fast, chuckle nuts!